Good afternoon and welcome to the Grand Prairie City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 21st. This is your afternoon edition. I would call the meeting to order and ask everyone in attendance to rise and join us in singing O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you to the National Film Board for the images of our country and to an alumni of our very own Grand Prairie Boys Choir for the audio. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor O'Toole, you're first in the queue there.
I move that Council adopt the minutes of the City Council meeting. Sorry?
Absolutely. You know, you're correct. I said agenda, but you are correct.
Yeah, I was just looking down the line here. So I'll do that again. I move the Council adopt the minutes of the City Council meeting held Monday, May 6, 2019 as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any errors or omissions in those set of minutes? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries, and now we'll go to the agenda. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move that Council adopt the agenda with the addition of item 7.2, Transit Service Review.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on the agenda as recommended? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries and brings us to a delegation portion of our agenda. As the public will notice, we have adjusted, as approved by council, we've adjusted the way our council meetings are structured. We have two opportunities for delegations at this meeting. This first afternoon session has an opportunity for anybody who wants to speak to business arising from committee meetings. And later this evening, after we have a recess, there will be an opportunity for anybody who wishes to speak to anything that is on the evening agenda. And so I see that there's nobody joining us here this afternoon, but it is one of two opportunities at our council meeting to speak to council. Since there's nobody here, we'll close the delegation portion of our agenda. We have no items of unfinished business, and that would take us to item 7.1, reports, and the June 3rd council meeting change of date. I'm not sure if there's a member of administration that was going to speak to that, but recognizing that a number of members of council will be out of the city at the start of June, there is a recommendation to reschedule the June 3rd meeting to June 4th at 3 p.m. And so if somebody would like to make that motion, Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, well, Mayor Given. I'll move the council reschedule the June 3rd, 2019 City Council meeting to June 4th, 2019 at 3 p.m.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Minhas. Any discussion or debate on the motion? And seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries, and that brings us to our added agenda item 7.2. And I think, Mr. Harvard, were you going to introduce this topic for us?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yes, so what the Transit Department is doing is our report here is we're recommending that the following transit service changes be implemented. Number one would be implementing smaller buses for selected evening and weekend service, and also adjusting the schedule on select routes to match ridership demand. And speaking to this report, One of the things that we're noticing is that there are a number of times and routes that are not utilized effectively. We end up having very minimal, if any, ridership on certain routes. And as the report indicates, Route 7 is a prime example of that, where there are times when we literally have no one on the bus at all. So what we're recommending to do is to look at that and in terms of matching our ability to provide service is we'd be looking at Route 7, changing that to more of a school route, so that would address the actual need and the use of that current route as it is. In terms of the ability to utilize smaller buses, that would be where there is ridership on a route, not specific or certainly nowhere near enough to utilize a larger bus, but it would make sense in that case to retain service, but to utilize a smaller bus in order to sort of match the demand with the supply. Those are the two options that we're currently looking at. We're reviewing the entire service as it is, route by route, at every level. Fortunately, we've got lots of data, recent data in terms of from the fare boxes, and we've just implemented automatic passenger counters as well as other. We've got 2-week counts. We've been utilizing discussions with our drivers as well to make sure that we haven't missed anything, and that we're not looking at any type of service changes that don't make sense. We're very confident that the data that we have is very good, and that any changes that we make in the future will be sound changes that make sense for the city, and that look at really matching that service demand with the delivery. And certainly looking at making our system more efficient in terms of costs, and certainly more efficient in terms of ridership and delivery.
Thanks very much, Mr. Harvard. Is there anybody that would care to make the motion? Councillor Bressie?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm wondering if it'd be possible for me to ask, there's kind of 5 recommendations in here, and I've got a different... My apologies.
Sure. So we did have the 2 recommendations with respect to smaller buses and adjusting the schedules. Councillor Friesen?
So I will make the motion that Council approve the following transit service changes. A, that we implement smaller buses for selected evening and weekend service, and B, adjust the schedule on select routes to match ridership demand.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So there's kind of 2 parts of this motion. I've got a different take on both of them. So I'm wondering if it's possible if I need to make a motion to amend, or if it's possible to split this motion.
Absolutely split the motion, sure. Yep. So we can split the motion. That's when a motion sort of has 2 different operative parts, and either could move independently. And so we will deal with the first part about implementing smaller buses for selected evening and weekend service, and then we'll move on to deal with the second one after that. So we'll vote on that first part only, and so we can have discussion debate on the first recommendation, which was implementing smaller buses on selected evening and weekend service. Any discussion or debate on that portion of the motion? I don't see anybody in the queue, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. The second portion, again, Councillor Friesen's motion, was to adjust the schedule on select routes to match ridership demand. Any discussion or debate on that point? Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just curious, if Council were to pass this motion today to adjust the schedule on select routes to match ridership demands, what would public engagement look like prior to any actual changes being made?
Mr. Harvard?
Through the chair, I think what we've done is we've utilized all of the tools that we have available to us in terms of actual ridership, and we've utilized certainly the input that we received during the transit, the last master plan engagement as well. So we've got all of that information. When you're looking at specifically asking somebody if you want to take your service away from you, though you end up opening the door to comments that will make sense on an individual basis, but not on a holistic basis. So that's why we're objective in our decision making. We utilize and we say, okay, what makes sense for the overall system, not for a particular person or two people. It's like, who is using the service? What does the service entail? How much does it cost the city? Does it make sense to continue on with the service as it is? It's not an easy decision to make when you're looking at making any type of service change. So we're very thoughtful in what we do and how we do it.
So somewhat similar to Councillor Bressy's question, if I can follow on. Ms. Harvard, if council did approve this motion, what engagement would you have with riders or the public to inform them of any changes that management might propose on a go-forward basis?
Okay. Well, Mayor Given, what we would do is we would ensure that all of our ridership is aware well in advance of any service changes. We would be looking at posting notices on the buses, having our drivers hand out information to the passengers, specifically for those who may be impacted more than others. And if there were any areas, well, not if, but so the major terminals, downtown, Eastlink, Prairie Mall, GPRC, wherever all of our buses congregate and the vast majority of people come on and off and transfer, we would have notices posted there, as well as on other stops. If there were particular stops that were being impacted, we would have notices advising the people who are using those stops as to what changes, if any, there would be.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bressy?
Great. So thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand the process now. So the status quo right now is when service changes are approved for transit, that's in the past, that's come before council, and council has approved particular changes, is my understanding of the status quo until today. Is that correct?
Mr. Harvard?
Through the chair. To be honest with you, I've not been party to any specific changes previously, so I'm not sure how this council has dealt with that. In my previous roles, it's been standard that any service change come before council for approval in each individual community.
And then the effect of this motion, would it be essentially saying that, well, yeah, so I guess I'm actually going to look to the mayor. My colleagues have been through this before. As a still newbie on council, this is the first time we've talked. I don't recall talking about particular services on transit. Is that how it's been done in the past? Specific changes have come to council and council's debated them in the past?
Yeah, Councillor Bressie, I'm trying to remember. I've seen in the past, it's typically taken an approach, sort of the form of a large master plan review that proposed new routes, and council, by virtue of there being additional cost, council would approve new routes and the associated capital costs and everything. And so it was more of a budget matter rather than a service operation matter. I don't remember council ever approving the location of stops, or council approving timing of the service. Like those weren't things. When there was an enhancement of the service, I've seen that come, and almost more for notice to council, but I haven't, or where there are significant financial implications, basically saying we need more money to add this new route, and council in this big plan, you approved that route, and so therefore here it is. But I don't remember sort of an ongoing service revision coming to council, unless any of my other colleagues do. Councillor Thiessen or Councillor O'Toole, Clayton. Yeah. So in terms of service revision, I haven't seen that come to council in the past. Major enhancements to the service have been typically what we've seen the most in the past.
And is that because we haven't been revising the system in the past and it just hasn't been happening, or is that because it's been happening and not actually coming to council?
I guess I would say in my experience, the revisions to the service have been in the past have been a lot less frequent. Typically we would work on a master planning schedule, which was a 5-year-ish sort of document generally, that either would or wouldn't get implemented, all or parts of it. And then the service would be looked at after that. I think what I'm understanding from the recommendation, at least my view of it, is that management is looking to do a more regular review of routes and service and adjusting more frequently. So this is asking council to give management that latitude to make more rapid adjustments.
So would it be fair to say that this is us delegating some authority we've reserved in the past, or delegating some of the parts of the process we've held on to in the past? Would that be a fair way to describe this?
Not really. Like if management decided they needed to, in my experience, if management decided they needed to add a stop here or there, take away a stop here or there based on passenger volumes or timing of routes, that was never something that we were involved in. In the past, my sense of it was that when management had a significant financial ask that they wanted to add to the system, that's where council would typically get involved in approvals. But on an ongoing basis, and so typically these kind of transit things were something that I would typically have seen significant discussions about transit maybe every 3 years. We may be entering into a phase where we see discussions about transit on a more regular basis. But again, that's my sense, and if any of my other council colleagues had a different sense of it, I'd be happy to accept that too. Councillor Thiessen?
Not adding to that conversation. I think you're bang on. Our previous council only talked and dealt with service revisions based off of the new transit master plan that we're working on that this council actually approved. So usually that informs all that stuff. I do have a question though for administration, just in regards to the timing of the changes. Mr. Harvard, when do you anticipate all these changes would be made as to the service revisions?
Mr. Harvard?
Through the chair, we would be looking at approximately mid-August for these changes so that they're in place for the new school year.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And that's good. I might add something to the motion a little bit later, but we're still dealing with item B on the split. So.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Any other discussion or debate on the motion to give management approval to adjust the schedule on select routes to match ridership demand? Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm going to move that we postpone this motion until the next regular council meeting. And the reason for that is that I am actually very supportive of this motion. I think that we should be more responsive with our ridership demand. I don't think that council should be involved in those decisions. I agree with the statement that this should be something that's objectively made by professionals looking at the best case scenario for the whole system, not individuals. At the same time, I don't know if everybody in the public will agree with that. And I'm really concerned that this is something that we're suggesting a different approach to how we make transit changes will be a bit more quicker and maybe a bit different than people are used to. And I'm really concerned that this recommendation didn't hit a public agenda and that there was no chance for people to tune into this council meeting or to read an agenda and send us an email saying we're concerned about this change you're making to the system. And I really object to us doing it today. So that's why I'm moving that we postpone this to next meeting to give people a chance to know we're having this discussion and tell us what they think. And I know that that's not as efficient. I know that there's some urgency to get going and not wait another 2 weeks, but I think there is a cost to having healthy representative democracy, and that is that it takes more time. And I'm not convinced that this is an urgent matter that needs to be dealt with today. I think this is a place where we can take the time to give people a chance to tell us what they think about a revision to the system.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. So a motion to postpone to a specific time is debatable. So open for discussion, debate on Councillor Bressie's motion to postpone consideration of this motion to our next council meeting. Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Nothing for the debate, just a question for administration in regards to this. Director Miller or Mr. Harvard, did administration consult with the public in any way prior to bringing this forward to council on potential revisions to the transit service?
Mr. Miller?
Thanks, Mayor Given. We did do a public engagement process working with corporate communications, And there wasn't specific questions about specific routes asked, but it was questions about how they view transit, how much we spend on transit, how much should we spend on transit in the future. And there wasn't a whole lot of feedback from the public. There wasn't perhaps maybe not a whole lot of interest in the survey, but perhaps Mr. Harvard can add a little bit more detail to it.
Mr. Harvard?
Through the chair. You're very correct in your discussion. I mean, previously as well, during the budget deliberations, there were a number of questions on that document that said what city services would you be looking at if you wanted to make changes, and there was a significant amount of people who suggested that a decrease in transit investment would be, they had the appetite for that. So, I mean, that sort of lends itself to answer sort of that piece, that overall public support for transit is not as strong as it is in other communities. That said, certainly it's a service that is needed and utilized daily by a number of people. So it's a service that I believe we need to make as strong and as effective as we can, given the given all of the other factors that are out there, including what including all of the surveys of users and non-users. I mean, we're all taxpayers, and we all want to make sure that our dollar goes as far as it can go. And so let's work together to make the service as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up question. How long did we run that survey? Is there a duration? Did we run it for 28 days, 30 days, 14 days? The reason I asked that question is just to see how long it was out there in front. Councillor Bresty has a motion to postpone an additional 2 weeks. But if that survey was live and active for, let's say, a month, I wouldn't see any reason to postpone at this point, because that was done extensively already to a lesser degree, I guess. But
Mr. Miller, do you have any information on that?
Thanks, Mayor. Given my understanding is the survey was run from April 1st to April 29th, so a period of about a month.
4 weeks.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor O'Toole?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this motion just due to the fact that there was a survey done, and I think that's enough engagement at this point in time. That's face to face, and yeah, I won't be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Clayton?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I also won't be supporting the tabling motion. I feel that although this current opportunity for engagement may, in some people's standards, be brief, I don't think this is the first time we've spoke about transit in the last 10 years. I can tell you that it's not. There was a lot of consultation with industry, with traditional users, whether it be students, post-secondary students, people that work in retail. There was a lot of consultation last term. That information was used, and therefore I think this motion is solid in the sense that we're going to implement smaller buses for select evening and weekend routes, and we're going to schedule routes based on the ridership demand. To me, it's a very general statement, but it's absolutely what we optimally want to get out of our transit. We want to use the buses that are best suited for the needs, and we want to run the routes based on the best timing schedule. So this motion sets that forward, and I don't think by delaying it, we're going to come to any other conclusions. So I won't support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Palat?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I also won't be supporting the motion. I think administration's done an awful lot of work on this. We've been talking about this as a council for quite a long time, and I think we have to trust the experts in this field, and I think I've trusted Mr. Harvard and his team that they've done their due diligence on this and that they're doing the right thing. Delaying it for 2 weeks does come with a cost. It might not seem like a big deal, but it does come with a cost to taxpayers. Every day we delay on this is just delaying the changes that are probably inevitably going to happen in 2 weeks, even if we did postpone this. I can appreciate the appetite to want to consult and engage with the community more. I can really appreciate that. I do think, though, that even if we did have that happen, I don't think it's going to change the outcome personally. So I just don't think waiting 2 more weeks is the best benefit for the city at this time. And I also want to support administration for the work that they've done today.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. I'll just say that I won't support the tabling motion, and maybe similar to others, but just I think that this is an area where there are a number of areas of city services where we rely on our professionals who have expertise in that specific service to bring recommendations forward to council or to make service adjustments. And it might not be a perfect analogy, but in my own mind, it's a bit akin to roads. Council doesn't identify and approve every single road to get paved. We trust that there are expertise in our engineering department and in our transportation department that say, hey, on a objective, quantitative criteria, this is the road that needs to be repaired. And we expect that they do that. We give them the budget allocation to go and do that, and they choose the roads in the most efficient and effective sort of manner. In my mind, at least, this is an example of that. And even in those other examples, as we saw with the sidewalk program recently, management identified what was objectively, in their estimation, an appropriate area to do some sidewalk replacement. We heard concerns from the public and members of the public. Council heard those concerns and directed management to make a change. But we actually didn't investigate every single site that they were going to do and approve every single site that management was going to do for sidewalk because we trust their expertise in that area. I really appreciate that transit is a meaningful and important service in people's day-to-day lives. And I suspect that if management goes too far in making changes, we will hear about it, just like we do with every other city service. And so for those reasons and that trust in management, and I appreciate that all members of council have trust in management. I wouldn't suggest that anybody doesn't. But I just think that this is a regular process in many, many other city services. And we're just applying that same management latitude to transit that we have in many other areas. Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I can do a head count. I know that Councillor Bressy's motion has been lost, but I too won't be supporting the motion, and largely because transit has been a big part of especially the community living portfolio. I think Mr. Harvard has been into our committee meetings almost as much as our director of community living over the past year. So we've had lots of discussions about the transit service, about the size of buses, about the routes and schedules, and this is finally all coming to a head. So there's been lots of time where this has been out front in front of the public. I also believe that they'll be able to make more informed decisions with their new passenger counters, as Mr. Harvard said in his report. With those being on board, we'll be able to make more accurate changes based on the relevant data, which is people getting on and off of the bus at the select times. I do have concerns as well that this may affect certain school routes, but until those routes are identified and brought forward to council and the public, as is in this report, those aren't identified. So we're just going to use the available data and go from there. But I do appreciate your passion for engagement in saying so. I may have a follow-up motion after this next two motions passes in order to make sure that we get in front of that engagement. So thank you for that, Councillor Bressy.
Councillor Thiessen, we'll leave it to Councillor Bressy to close on his motion to postpone because he may yet convince some of us to support him in spite of our stated positions, and we're always open to that. Councillor Bressy.
Great, thank you. I want to be crystal clear that I don't actually have an objection to the motion. The motion, any other day, if it went through a process that was usual for our processes, I'd be an easy yes on this. I want us to be more efficient with transit. For me, it's not even so much about saving the bottom line. I think we could serve more people for the budget we're doing right now and give them better service. This will allow us to do that, so I'm supportive of the motion. And up until the kind of this last half mile, I'm very supportive of the process. I think we had good, robust engagement, talk about our service in general. I think this has been discussions we've been having for months now. That being said, with every single other process, we go through engagement, we go through these conversations, and then the recommendations hit a public agenda that the public can see before our meeting that we vote on. I don't recall any other thing that was an emerging situation where we haven't had something hit a public agenda for the public to read and see we were talking about it before we discussed it. I don't see a reason why that couldn't have happened this time, and it just doesn't sit right with me. I'd also point out this is our first time having a council meeting at a new time that's not as accessible for people to watch, and we just changed it on them, and now to boot we're voting on something that didn't even hit a public agenda. It's not a good look for us in terms of transparency, and I absolutely can't support this process, even though I support the motion. I've got grave concerns about this process.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressy. So we'll call for the vote on Councillor Bressy's motion to postpone to our next council meeting. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry, so we'll go back to the main motion as made by Councillor Friesen. Any discussion or debate on the main motion as made by Councillor Friesen? Councillor Bressy.
Great. I just do want to commend transit staff for the work they're doing on these routes, and I am supportive of the actions we're taking. I will be voting no. I wish I was voting in 2 weeks because it would be a yes, but just want to vote. I'm voting no, but it's a process thing. I've got great faith in our staff. I've got good faith that this system is going to get improved for the people that use it. I really like these changes, so I'm voting no, but I want to be really clear. It's a process thing, not an actual motion thing.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Pressy. I don't see anybody else in the queue. That being the case, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And Councillor Thiessen, you said you had an additional item that are arising?
As sort of similar, I would move an additional point to this recommendation, and that would be that administration provide a minimum of 60 days notice to the public for changes in the transit routes affected by the changes. In saying that, I know I double spoke there with the changes, but hopefully this gets in front of what Councillor Bressy's concerns are as far as public engagement, especially to the riders that it actually impacts, whatever routes are determined to be the lesser than and therefore get filed back in their service. We want to make sure that those people are well informed and that we get way ahead of that. So I think 2 months' time, setting that as a minimum is a good enough lead time to talk with those riders and to ensure that they're aware of the changes that are happening and any schedule revisions they may have to make in their life.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on Councillor Thiessen's motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I think that handled all. Does that handle all the business related to this item? Looks like it does. Then we'll move on in our agenda to our committee business, starting with item 8.1, the Community Living Committee meeting from May 7th. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move that Council approve the minutes of the Community Living Committee meeting held May 7th.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Any errors or omissions we need to correct? Okay, again, seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. There's only one bit of business that came out of it, but it's a two-part motion, so I'll read it in one part and then we'll go to the other part. And I would move that Council appoint Ms. Cassidy Dick, Ms. Leah Boss, Ms. Julia Friesen, and Ms. Gwen Lewis as weed inspectors under the Weed Control Act of Alberta for 2019. Just speaking to this motion, the Weed Control Act of Alberta requires the local authority to appoint weed inspectors to inspect and enforce the control of noxious weeds and the destruction of prohibited noxious weeds. Anyways, it's a legislative requirement.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Given the second part of this motion, I would move that Council appoints the Community Living Committee as an independent appeals panel for 2019. And speaking to this motion, the Act also requires the local authority to appoint an independent panel to deal with appeals resulting from the application of legislation, that being our Community Living Committee meeting, and I don't know if we've ever done anything different.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Again, nothing, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen, anything else you want to highlight from that set of minutes?
Yeah, I got a couple things highlighted, but I got another agenda to read over after this. So I'll just cover some of the highlights. Obviously, weed inspectors aren't as controversial as transit today, but some of the Director of Service Area updates that we received. The Dave Barr Community Center team has received several nominations for the annual GPRC Early Childhood Education Awards being held on June 6th of this year. I hope you all will be in attendance. I know I've already been invited and I'll be there. But some of our staff that received those nominations were Tina Lively and Christine Bryan for Educator of the Year, Michelle Legacy for Early Childhood Director of the Year, as well as the Dave Barr Community Center got Daycare and Pre-Kindergarten for Early Childhood Service Provider of the Year nomination as well. So hopefully we come away with lots of awards and we can pat ourselves on the back because we know that we provide such a great service there. And I'll just leave it at that. Our people at the Dave Barr Community Center should be proud, and I'll have more to update at our next living agenda that I will go through.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. So let's go to item 8.2, the Corporate Services Committee meeting from that same day, May 7th. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move the council approve the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, May 7th, as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any errors or omissions, corrections that we need to make? I don't see anybody ringing in. Council, please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
Just got a couple of things that I'd like to highlight. Director Ms. Walker presented a verbal update, and assessment and taxation is well underway, and the approval of the 2019 property tax bylaw will be levied and mailed out later this month, which I think is starting already. We had corporate facility management update on a number of facilities. We're just assessing assets and located in different areas of the community that the city owns. Finance administration is working on the April month-end reports, as well as the ITS is working with a Perfect Mind software implementation, and it is going very well. And procurement administration is doing a cleanup of inventory of surplus items, repurposing for purposes where possible, reducing the number of new items needed to be purchased. And then we did have a review of the unaudited financial statements, and we was presented to council's committee, and they were carried. And thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. I think we go now to 8.3, Infrastructure and Protective Services. And Councillor Friesen, I think you handled that meeting for us, didn't you?
I did, thank you. So I'd like to move that the minutes be accepted from the IPS Committee Services meeting Tuesday, May 14th, 2019.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Anything that you'd like to highlight, Councillor Friesen?
Yeah, there's a few things that I know folks are keen to know what's going to be repaired and fixed up and detoured around this year. So we've got some of the pathways ready to get fixed, and that'll be happening in Countryside and O'Brien. Sidewalks primarily in Patterson area, and the roads, the big one is on 104th Avenue between 92nd Street and Landing Drive. So those are out to tender now, and we'll start later on this spring. And a pothole with some excitement, I assume in some of the operations, that there is now a hot repair machine which allows us to make more durable repairs to potholes year round. So that, of course, is underway. And we've also got a pothole repair app that provides for easier tracking of calls of where the potholes are and when repairs are done. So our staff are using that. And earliest ever completed spring cleanup of Priority 1 roads. 2 should be done by now as well, and 3 will be done by the end of June. So that's the folks who get shoveled last are going to get cleaned up last, but that'll be done within about the next month. And of course, spring is in the air with enforcement in May. They're out checking motorcycles and educating on bike safety for this year. For this month. And Avondale High School redevelopment plan, the terms of reference were accepted. So what that means is that now our administration is going to begin engaging with the public and having a look at what we can do with the current composite high school area, and the leisure center is there, and there's quite a bit of area around there. So that redevelopment plan will take about the next year to complete. And there's a municipal development plan and land use bylaw amendment that will be coming before council next meeting, which will be June 4th. And I think that's has a public hearing that day as well. And it's regarding small lot development. Currently, there's a limit of about 25% small lot development for developers. And the amendment would allow a temporary relaxation of that limit, which gives developers a little more flexibility in getting going on some of their areas. So those were the highlights, and no motions to approve coming out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. Item 8.5, Community Living Committee. Back to Councillor Thiessen.
Woohoo. I thought I was going to go Yeah, corporate
Mayor
services
Given, I
earlier
mentioned
in the
one.
day.
Well, Councilor O'Toole, it feels like I'm trying to cut you out. Maybe it's just the fact that we're in an afternoon meeting rather than evening.
Well,
My
you know,
apologies.
don't know what to say. Just keep my mouth shut.
8.4, my apologies. Councilor O'Toole.
I move the council approve the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, May 14th, 2019, as presented.
Thanks, Councilor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Motion carries. Councilor O'Toole, anything you want to highlight?
Just a couple things. We had Acting Director Scott Smith present the committee with a verbal update. Most of the things that I just previously talked about are in place. Assessment and taxation. Taxes were levied and are aiming to have the tax notices out by May 24th. Assessors are doing re-inspections in the mission area and preparing to send out requests for information to commercial property owners for lease and expense information. Other than that, Procurement Administration has released a survey on mail services to gather feedback from all departments. There is a surplus of retired Parks Department equipment for listing on Gov Deals. Reports are finalized after procurement reviews of all departments. And we had a delegation come to talk about some tax deferral and penalty cancellation, and they'll be coming back again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Councilor O'Toole. Councilor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I would move that council approve the minutes of the May 14th Community Living Committee meeting. Period.
Okay, thanks very much, Councilor Thiessen. Any changes we need to make to that set of minutes before we officially adopt them? I don't see anybody ringing in, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councilor Thiessen, anything to highlight?
Yeah, I got lots highlighted here, which is why I only highlighted one thing at the last agenda reading. There was no items coming out that required a motion, but just from the Director's Service Area update, I wanted to inform members of council and the community that registration for the Eastlink Center's 3rd annual triathlon is open. Early bird pricing is in effect until June 15th, and registration is open to individuals or teams for try-a-try, sprint, or team sprint, and more information is available on the Eastlink Center's website for athletes and volunteers. Also, at our last council meeting, we all had the opportunity to miss out, unfortunately, on the Community Youth Engagement Awards. It was at that time that the Montrose Cultural Centre received a 2019 Youth Engagement Award for venue. Also, the Dave Barr Community Centre initiated a drop-in program for pickleball last week on the arena floor. The program was an immediate success, and from all accounts on Facebook, it continues to be a success at the Dave Barr Community Centre. Also, last week, or was it last week? Maybe it was a couple weeks ago, on May 8th, nearly 11,600 pounds of garbage was picked up from Highway West ditches by Parks Operations, followed up by another 20,000 pounds of trash that was picked up on our Scrub and Grub Day that we had here on the Friday. All in all, in total, the city, I'm not sure if that's the final total, but well over 30,000 pounds of trash. So, ladies and gentlemen, please use the trash receptacles out there because it helps our city stay pretty. And also, our custodial team at the Montrose Cultural Centre and other facilities have received naloxone training. The timing of this has enabled our facility at the Montrose Cultural Centre to be better prepared to support patrons. And since the naloxone training has happened, one incident has already occurred where a patron's life was saved due to the training on the team. So congratulations to our team member who helped save a life. I know no one ever wants to be in that position, but it's so important, especially in today's day and age, that anyone and everyone who has training on how to help people overcome an overdose, whether that's naloxone or Narcan or whatever is available, that we're all putting our best foot forward. And kudos to the city for doing that with all our departments and now our custodial staff as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. That handles all of our committee business and would take us into correspondence. I'd note that there was one item of correspondence from the Downtown Association area looking for council to make formal some appointments to their membership, to their board. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. And so I would make a recommendation that council, this is we had our AGM a little while back, and so some names come forward from the Downtown Association, and so these are the names that would come forward. So it's kind of some housekeeping for us, but that I would make a recommendation that council appoint the following members to the Downtown Business Improvement Area Board. Harold Friesen, Shane Mudrick, Christina McNeil, and Diana Lauren for a 3-year term each, effective March 1st, 2017. 2, John Kriska, Marcus Hosser for a 3-year term effective March 1st, 2018. And Chelsea O'Neill, Grant Berg, and Cliff Heeden for a 3-year term effective March 1st, 2019.
Thanks very much, Councillor Plott. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Not seeing any. It sounds as though all these people were duly elected at an AGM, and maybe we're doing some catch-up with some of the past appointments that weren't formalized this way in the past. Is that correct, Councillor Plott? Okay. Any other discussion or debate? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. There were no other items of correspondence. We had no delegations this afternoon, and we have no notices of motion. And so if I understand this new process correctly, I think that brings us to the point where we're going to recess the first portion of our City Council meeting. We will reconvene at, we decide, 6 o'clock. So we will recess the council meeting and reconvene for public hearings later on this evening at 6 p.m. And for anybody watching online, that's when you tune back in. Or if you're watching it in an archive version, that'll be a lot easier. You just fast forward. But we will recess the council meeting and see everybody back shortly.